Hey guys, this is Mark, and I got a quick message to the neurotypical wives out there who think they may be suffering from Cassandra Syndrome. If you truly do have Cassandra Syndrome, then the reason you have that is because you have been operating in the sympathetic nervous system mode more often than the parasympathetic nervous system mode. We have this thing called the autonomic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is responsible for fight, flight, or freeze. And when that's operating, you're under the influence of cortisol and adrenaline. When you're in the parasympathetic nervous system mode, you're in rest and digest and repair. And instead of being under the influence of stress chemicals, you're under the influence of a calming chemical called acetylcholine. So if you have Cassandra Syndrome, and if you feel like you're having some mental health issues and now some physical health issues, it's because most of the waking day, you are in some level of fight, flight, or freeze. And so with the Cassandra Syndrome recovery group that I conduct, and the link will be below this video in the comment section and in the description area, we will be looking at ways for you to effectively spend most of your waking time, which depends on how much you sleep. If you have Cassandra Syndrome, you're probably not sleeping very well, so you may be awake 16, 17, 18 hours a day. We want you to be operating mostly in the parasympathetic nervous system mode during those waking hours, and also to improve your sleep. So I will be engaging in some cognitive behavioral therapeutic techniques, cognitive restructuring, and self-care strategies, such that you can be mostly under the influence of acetylcholine rather than cortisol and adrenaline, which now that frees up a bunch of energy for your body to rest, digest, and repair. You got to spend more time in repair than in fight. And that's not going to get accomplished if you're always under the influence of the sympathetic nervous system. Hope that makes sense. Links below. Join the Cassandra Syndrome Recovery Group. Hey guys, this is Mark, and I want to briefly summarize Cassandra Syndrome as I see it. And this is what I run into when I'm dealing with people online in my groups. What happens originally is the NT wife is her ASD husband's special interest. When the romantic phase expires, he gravitates towards his original special interest. She starts feeling deprived and alone. And this goes on for several years and decades. And she starts having some emotional and physical health problems as a result of emotional deprivation. So there's that piece. Then the second piece to Cassandra Syndrome is when she describes her dilemma to some close family members or close friends, they have a hard time believing her because, let's say her name is Sally and the ASD husband's name is Jack. Well, Jack functions fine in all other areas of life. Walks fine, talks fine, looks fine, works fine. May be the smartest guy at work. Just a nice guy, you know. And so they know Jack, and when Sally describes Jack as being, meltdownish and shutdownish and abusive and adult temper tantrums all the time, and he never gives me any give and take in conversation or affection and so on, some of those people look at Sally and go, wow, she's exaggerating. She's been very, very melodramatic. Maybe she's borderline personality disorder or histrionic. And they don't believe her because they know Jack, but they only see one side to Jack. They don't see the other side to Jack that Sally sees behind closed doors. So they don't believe her. So that's the second piece. We have the emotional deprivation piece, and then some people just don't believe that things are as bad as she is describing, which is terribly invalidating to her when she's trying to seek some outside moral support from close family members or close friends. So there it is in the summary. She kind of gets, she takes a hit times two. Emotional deprivation, and people don't believe that that's really what's going on. The pathway to developing Cassandra Syndrome often begins with subtle yet potent emotional signals. So we'll look at some of the things that in this case, the NT wife might notice. First of all would be perceived emotional discrepancy. Initially, the wife becomes aware of troubling disparity between her emotional experiences and how her ASD husband responds. For example, she might express her concerns about her husband's increasing withdrawal or unhealthy coping mechanisms, hoping for an open dialogue. Instead, she may encounter dismissive remarks or indifferences that suggest her feelings are overreactions. There's also chronic invalidations. As time passes, the attempts to voice concerns are met with repeated invalidations. Comments like, "You're overly emotional," or "You're just imagining things," become common. And this dismissal gradually reinforces a belief that her emotions and perceptions lack legitimacy, creating a profound sense of confusion and self-doubt. Next, we have escalating emotional distress. With persistent invalidation, the wife may find herself grappling with intense frustration, sorrow, and overall emotional turmoil. She becomes increasingly alienated, often questioning her reality. This phase can lead to a refinement of emotional depth, where feelings of anger transform into prolonged sadness or despair, a vicious cycle of emotional turmoil without resolution. So now let's look at some of the isolation patterns. As emotional distress continues to grow, distinct patterns of isolation often emerge. For example, social withdrawal. The NT wife may begin to retreat from her social connections, feeling that friends and family will not understand her struggles. She may choose to avoid discussing her experiences altogether, leading to a profound sense of loneliness and despair. For example, she may stop attending gatherings or reduce interactions with supportive friends, fearing judgment or misunderstanding. There can also be a desperate search for validation. The NT wife might latch onto rare moments when her ASD husband expresses understanding, only to be met with further experiences of neglect, reinforcing her feelings of insecurity and desperation. And this cycle of hope, followed by disappointment, can become emotionally draining. Next, we have conflict or resignation. Relationships may enter a state marked by increased tension, characterized by frequent arguments over unaddressed issues. In some cases, the NT wife may choose resignation over confrontation, adopting a whatever mentality, which can lead to apathy toward the relationship itself. And this resignation can manifest in feeling numb or detached from both her ASD husband and her own emotions. Because you have felt hopeless for how long now? The answer is you've lost track of how long. Hopelessness is basically where there's no vision for how things could be any better. Some of you have been there, some of you are still there. And sometimes she, in this case the NT wife, is so burnt out that she often has the thought, why even try? I don't have the energy to work on this. People that end up in this Cassandra group, they have kind of tired of working on it. And that's understandable. You had hope back in the day with him, and then it got dashed. And then some things changed a little bit temporarily. And then they got dashed again. And then, then it looked like he was going to do pretty good there for a while. And I think we finally turned a corner. And your hopes got dashed again. And you played that game for how long? Answer, I've lost track. So your hopes were up, then they were dashed, then were up again and down, and then drove you crazy. Many of you may have had the thought, something along the lines of, at least with this guy, I don't know how things could be any better. Or worse yet, I don't know how things can keep from deteriorating. Because in most cases, you have given it your best shot. You've tried a multitude of things. And you ended up here in this group, which is a sign that I'm getting nowhere other than making myself sick. And I'm not saying you're still stuck in the past, but we definitely want to, if you are, and probably at some level from time to time you still are, we've got to move forward. And so I want you to begin thinking about begin the business of how can I have a vision for a better future. The opposite of that might be hopelessness. And this is where there is no vision for how things could be better. You had hope way back in the day with him, didn't you? You had hope, especially when you first realized, there was a thing called Asperger's Syndrome. Maybe there's things that can be done. And you tried everything that you knew to try. But if you're like most of the other NTs that I work with, your hope was dashed time and time and time again. And now you're at the point where I don't even want to get my hopes up again. Your hope was that you could have hope in him and trust in him, and he'd be your teammate and your soulmate and would be right there by your side and would be moral comfort for you when you needed it, affection when you needed it, and so on. But as you have found out with an autistic brain,
who's not necessarily very socially or emotionally intelligent, nor has much in the way of social and emotional needs, you realize that I honestly just cannot count on this person. So you want to stop giving him too much power. For example, he has to say or do certain things or I can't be happy. Or he has to live up to my expectations or I slip into a depression. Or he has to avoid saying or doing certain things or I feel like I'm less of a person or my self-esteem gets tanked. The bottom line is this: you can't count on him. And if the truth be known, you really can't count on anybody. Some people will move. Some people will die. Of course, you're glad you had the relationship with them while they were local and alive, but people come and go all the time. You cannot count on any one person to be there in a meaningful way for your entire lifespan. You can count on God if you're a person of faith, which I am. He's not going anywhere. As a species, we weren't hardwired, ladies, to hide or recoil or live in victim mode. We were designed, say by God, the universe, whatever term you want to use, to move forward and conquer. You have some doubt about that? Just look at your history books. As far back as there is recorded history, you will see incidents where the humans moved forward and conquered. That's why we're still here today. If we weren't hardwired that way, we wouldn't be here. So we are always shooting for growth. We're always shooting for expansion. We're always shooting for improvement. And you don't have to agree with it. It wouldn't matter because it's in your DNA. What I just said, it's in your DNA anyway. Whether you agree with it or not doesn't change the fact that it's in there. You're responsible for finding meaning in your life. And now we've talked about hopelessness. It's where there's no vision for a future. We want to talk about hope. But before we talk about hope, you have to know that it's your job to find hope. It's your responsibility for finding your happiness, not his. If he has to do certain things in order for you to be happy, you can't live like that anymore. So hope is positive anticipation, which is having some sort of vision for a better future. We all have to have some idea of how things can be better tomorrow. Otherwise, there's really no reason to get out of bed. You have lived and breathed negative anticipation for too long. What's the next thing he's going to say or do that's going to hurt? We have to stop that destructive cycle of negative anticipation and replace it with positive anticipation. You need something to look forward to, kind of almost like a psychological carrot at the end of a stick. So, how many times have you replayed the movie in your head where he did you wrong? You have to stop playing that movie and replace it with a new movie, which is going to be entitled, we'll just call it My Vision for a Better Future. Going in circles is part of going through it. So you can envision a bunch of circles moving this way. And so some days there's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Some things you will never be able to let go of. Some things you will be able to let go of quickly. Some things you'll let go of completely and then they'll come back later on. So it's not linear. If you get to acceptance in the grief cycle, depending on circumstances and what kind of bad day you might be having, you may bounce back to anger. Sometimes you may bounce back to denial. Sometimes you may stay stuck in bargaining. So it's definitely not linear. And so just be prepared to get a full spectrum of this. I may go to my grave and never fully let go of this. Or this other thing that I think I would never be able to let go of. For some reason, something clicked and I finally have let go of it. I thought I was over this. Clearly I'm not. I thought I wasn't over this. Clearly I am. So it's just going to be kind of a mixed bag. But the big message here is there is no rush and there's no wrong way to do it as long as you're doing it. It being staying in some version of recovery, using some component of the recovery process. It could be something as simple as just staying in touch with the ladies on the Facebook group. It could be something as simple as, well, maybe I need to process a little more. You go get your journal. And because a lot of times writing, I would strongly recommend that you write too rather than type. Sometimes writing stuff when you're not really sure, you have a bunch of question marks. Sometimes just going in and doing just a bunch of free writing where I'm not going to monitor my thoughts. I'm just going to kind of let the pen go. Sometimes you'll find answers just through the process of writing. there's no rush in letting go of resentment. In a nutshell, the antidote to letting go of resentment is forgiveness. And forgiveness is just this. I'm going to catch myself replaying the past hurts in my head. I'm going to catch myself flashing back to past hurtful memories. And then instead of ruminating about it and playing that whole damn movie again, I'm going to catch it and go, okay, yep, I remember this hurtful thing that happened last year. And I'm not going to entertain that thought. I'm not going to jump into my seat at the movie theater, get my bag of popcorn, and play that whole damn movie again. It's not. So letting go of resentment is simply, I'm not going to replay those old hurtful memories. I'm not ignoring them. They're going to pop in my head. And what was done is not okay. So it's not getting him off the hook or making excuses for him. It's simply, forgiveness is simply, when the thoughts of past hurts enter my head, I'm not going to sit there and waller in it and ruminate it and go over the whole thing. So forgiveness is for you, nothing to do with him.
The only request I have of my neurodiverse couples out there is please don't fight on the same day. In other words, one of you can fight on Sunday, the other one on Monday, then back and forth like that. So as long as one of you is sane, both of you will be okay. Hey, quick message to autistic husbands that are also workaholics. Might not be a bad idea to set an alarm on your watch so that a couple times a day you can text your wife and say, hey, was thinking of you, looking forward to seeing you later, love you. Hey, are you a neurotypical wife in a relationship with an autistic husband? Do you miss the affection that you used to get from him? Is your name Cassandra? Quick message to people with autism. Instead of engaging in your one little special interest all the time, maybe branch out, okay? Widen your scope. Here's an example. How about learn how to play banjo? Banjo. Quick message to neurotypical wives. Your autistic husband does not speak Vietnamese, nor does he speak emotionese. He only speaks logic-ese. So if you want to get a message across to him, you better appeal to his logic. Okay, so here's one hell of a dilemma for the neurodiverse couple. The neurotypical wife says, well, I have 2 kids and 1 husband, but I really have 3 kids because I'm parenting my husband. And then the autistic husband goes, well, my NT wife is very parental, talks down to me, treats me like a child. So the NT wife feels like she's married to a child. The ASD husband feels like he's married to a parent.
Now, it is possible that she perceives that you don't understand her emotions, which is probably true. But now we're back to this business of she needs to realize that all people with ASD have some alexithymic traits, which is just emotions blindness, and they're not going to understand the other person's feelings. And if she demands that you understand her feelings anyway, she's laid her own trap. You should understand my emotions even though you have a disorder where your emotional intelligence is low. She complains about you don't have any empathy. Where's her empathy now?
Quick message to husbands on the autism spectrum. When's the last time you just cuddled with your NT wife? Yeah, snuggled up to her and two of you just laid there and beside one another. When was the last time? 1942. Hey guys, this is Mark, and this is a message to the autistic spouses out there to help you make sense of this Cassandra Syndrome business. And by the way, there are many NT husbands that experience Cassandra Syndrome as well. So kind of the backstory on this, this is what I've run into over the years of working in this field with the autistic spouse and the NT spouse. We use the example of the NT wife and the autistic husband. What goes on initially is he presents really well. The autistic husband presents well. Some people call that masking. He just wants to be liked and approved of. Why wouldn't he? And so he provides his NT partner, soon-to-be wife, with a lot of affection and attention and emotional reciprocity, give and take in conversation, and so on. So then after the newness of the relationship kind of wears off, the autistic spouse will kind of gravitate back towards his special interests or work. And so she's kind of feeling left behind, like, what happened? You know, we were connected and he's drifting away. And he doesn't even know he's drifting away, but she does. And she is starting to feel what I refer to as emotional deprivation. It's like I'm not getting some of my needs met. I don't feel like I'm being listened to. I don't feel like I'm being understood. I don't feel like I'm being validated. And she can only go on like that for a few years before it starts affecting her mental health and her physical health. And that is the Cassandra Syndrome business, where if this goes on for decades, she's depressed and she's starting to have some autoimmune disease and so on, because she has to have that emotional connection in order to be healthy. The autistic spouse gets his emotional needs met through his special interests in work, especially if he enjoys his work and stays gone at work a lot. He's getting all his emotional needs met that way with non-social tasks, and he can hyper-focus on those tasks for extended periods of time. And he's getting his emotional needs met. But with the NT wife, she gets her primary emotional needs met through social activities, especially through her spouse. So when she's not getting that, she's losing because one of her primary needs is not getting met. And then she will often tell people what's going on. Let's say, for example, there are friends and family members that know the autistic spouse and the NT spouse, and they know both of them. And let's say the autistic spouse name is Steve, and her name is Ann. So people know both Steve and Ann, but they don't see what goes on behind closed doors. They don't see what Ann sees. Ann sees a man who does frequent shutdowns, meltdowns, adult temper tantrums, doesn't show much in the way of empathy, doesn't provide moral support when needed. But outside of the home, other people see the two of them and they think that he's a nice guy. Like, I know him. He talks fine, walks fine, looks fine, works fine. I think Ann's being melodramatic because she's always complaining about him and I don't see it. He seems like a nice person. And so in this case, Ann is now in a double down position because the people that she talks to about what goes on behind closed doors, they kind of don't believe it. It's like, seems a little melodramatic. I don't think your husband is that bad of a guy. So now she's not only not getting her emotional needs met, but when she reports these things to other people, they don't really believe her. Until she gets in a community of other NT ladies suffering from Cassandra syndrome, and then they go, oh yeah, we know exactly what's been going on. And so, yeah, I would encourage any NT wives watching this video to be sure and hook up with other ladies going through the same thing. And on that note, I do have links below the video here in the description area and in the comment section. And I have a Cassandra Syndrome recovery group, and you'll be rubbing shoulders with other ladies that are in the same boat as you. Anyway, that's it. For those of you autistic spouses who are not quite sure exactly what that means, here's the summary. You presented well in the beginning. She thought she was on the right track. After a while, you gravitated toward your special interest and or work. She felt emotionally neglected. It started affecting her mental health and her physical health. As she reported these things to other people, the huge disconnect between you and her, whenever she would mention this to some people who did not know anything about ASD level 1, they didn't really believe her. They thought that she was kind of being melodramatic and exaggeratory. And so now she feels not only mentally and physically sick, but she feels isolated. That is a summary of Cassandra syndrome right there. So, if your NT spouse, whether male or female, states that he or she feels like they're suffering from Cassandra syndrome, it would be great if you could extend a little grace and mercy, not beat up on yourself. And, oh man, I didn't realize I caused this and I must be a bad spouse. That's not the point of this video. The point of this video is for help you to understand what went on. And instead of spending energy beating up on yourself about it, spend that energy extending a little grace and mercy to your NT spouse. And listen to them, try to understand the hurt and validate that that's their experience and what can I do to help. Okay? Here's your line. You ASD spouses, here's the line. I want to listen to your hurt, and I want to understand it fully, and I want to validate the fact that that's your truth and that has been your experience. And I'm sorry that this turned out this way. What can I do to help? Okay, that's your assignment. Part of the assignment is not beating up on yourself, okay? So let's look at some topics that you might consider journaling about if you're experiencing Cassandra Syndrome. We're going to look at, let's see, we have 15 of them here, and these are just some ideas. If you are suffering from Cassandra Syndrome, as you probably know, journaling is a big deal. So the first idea that could go in your journal would be understanding your feelings. Here you could explore your emotions regarding feeling unheard or dismissed. And the question to ask yourself might be, what specific situations bring these feelings to the surface? The second topic would be relationships. Here, I'd like for you to reflect on how Cassandra Syndrome affects your relationships with friends and family members and even co-workers. And the question you can ask yourself here is, are there patterns you notice? The third idea would be communication. Here you could journal about your communication style. And the question you can ask yourself here as you begin to journal would be, are there ways you feel you can express yourself more effectively? Another idea would be around validation. Here you can write about moments when you felt validated versus moments when you felt ignored. And the question here could be, how did these experiences impact you? And the fifth idea could be coping strategies. Here you might want to discuss strategies you use to cope with feeling unheard. And the question here could be, what works for you and what doesn't? Okay, let's look at self-advocacy. Here you would want to reflect on times when you advocated for yourself. And the questions to ask as journaling material would be, how did it feel to speak up and what was the outcome? Number 7 would be boundaries. Here you can explore your thoughts on boundaries in your relationship. And the question is, are there boundaries you'd like to set or adjust? Number 8 would be support systems. Here you can write about the support systems available to you. The question to ask would be, who can you talk to when you're feeling unheard or dismissed? Number 9, personal growth. Here you can reflect on how dealing with Cassandra Syndrome has shaped your personal growth. And the question is, what lessons have you learned? Number 10 would be future goals. Here I'd like for you to think about your goals for communicating effectively in the future. And the question to ask yourself would be, what steps can I take to work toward these goals? Number 11 would be self-compassion. So here you're going to be journaling about practicing self-compassion. And the question to ask yourself and journal about would be, how can you be kinder to yourself in moments of frustration? Number 12, this idea is about exploring triggers. Here you'd want to identify specific situations or conversations that trigger feelings related to Cassandra Syndrome. And the question could be, how can you prepare for these in the future? Number 13, joyful moments. Here you can write about moments when you felt truly heard or appreciated and validated. And the question is, what made these experiences stand out? 14, expressing needs. Here you can reflect on how comfortable you feel expressing your needs. And the question is, what holds you back and how can you overcome it? And the 15th and final idea I'd like to suggest would be around gratitude. And here you'd want to focus on what you're grateful for in your life and relationships. And the question to ask yourself as a way to get the journaling started would be, how can gratitude shift your perspective? So these prompts can help you dive deeper into your feelings and experiences, which hopefully will facilitate self-reflection and personal growth. And personal growth and self-care is the big deal here. If you are a neurotypical wife in a marriage with an ASD level 1 husband, and you feel like you're suffering from Cassandra Syndrome, then there's going to be a link below this video in the description area and also pinned in the comment section that will take you to my Cassandra Syndrome recovery group. We meet 1 hour a week for 4 weeks. I hope to see you in that group. Hey, this is Mark Hutten. Would you like to schedule a one-on-one Zoom call? Okay, it's so simple. Just look under any of my videos in the description area. Click on this Calendly link. Now you see my calendar. Pick your month, your day, anytime that's available. Enter your name and email address. Then you'll get a follow-up email with the Zoom link on the day and time that you picked. And voila, we will talk.